Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the Hinduja Global Solutions Limited Q1 FY 2022 earnings conference call. From the senior management of the company, we have with us today on the call Mr. Partha Desarkar, Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Srinivas Palakureddy, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. R. Ravi, Vice President. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star followed by 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Ravi Ramalingam, Vice President of Hinduja Global Solutions Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, in this call. I, R. Ravi, Head of Investor Relations at HGA, wishing all a very good evening and a warm welcome to the first quarter FY 22 results conference call. To discuss the first quarter results, I am joined by Mr. Partha Desarkar, the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer, and Mr. Srinivas Palakureddy, the Global CFO. Before we begin the conference call, I would like to mention that some of the statements made during the course of today's conference call may be forward-looking in nature, including those related to the future financials and operating performances, benefits and synergies of the company's strategies, future opportunities, and the growth of market of the company's services solutions. Further, I'd like to mention that some of the statements made in today's conference call may be forward-looking in nature and may involve risk and uncertainty. During the Q&A session, questions should be asked only related to the Q1 FY22 financials and business performance. While asking questions during the Q&A session, please restrict the questions to the quarter under review. The management may not be commenting on many of the speculative news that may be doing rounds in the social media. Before I hand over the call to the Partha Desarkar, I would like to mention that if there's a call drop during the course of the conference call, please bear with the management. Because of the COVID-19 call, all of us are taking calls on mobile from different locations. Hence, call drops are going to be proving a recurring problem. Before I hand over the call to Mr. Partha Desarkar to review the Q1, I would like to give a brief overview of the company. For Q1 FY21, we did a $74 million of revenue with 55 delivery centers across. We are in 7 countries. At the end of Q1 FY22, we have a total number of employees of 42,769 with 252 BPM clients. In the services area, we have done 4.5 billion annual voice minutes with 325,000 annual chat sessions, 150 million plus healthcare experiences managed in 34 languages we have supported. Our key strengths are the promoters of the company have not pledged any share. The company with a net cash of around 420 crores from 136 crores in FY21. We have reported a strong free cash flow. For FY21, we reported around 49% of EBITDA in free cash, and in Q1, we have reported 137. The stability is 60% of our revenues are coming from long tenured clients who are more than 10 years with us. We have a proven method of right-shore outsourcing, onshore and nearshore and offshore location. At client-centric, our CSAT score is an all-time high, and we are an employee-centric company. Between FY16 and FY21, we have grown our revenues by around 10.9% CAGR, and at the PAT level, the growth has been 27.2% for the same period. For FY21, we have reported an EPS of 161 and declared a dividend of around 40 per share. The global BPM spend has been growing at the rate of 5.1%, and you can see the slide in the investor section. The revenue of the global BPM was around $161 billion in 2017, and that is expected to go to 207 billion. This is a growth of around 5.1% CAGR. The global BPM services forecast is broadly divided into 2 parts: the traditional BPO as well as the BPaaS. And BPM sector is growing, but the composition of services is changing. SGS is evolving to the global trend, handling complex voice calls, human plus machine engagement, solution orchestral approach. Now I would like to invite Partha Desarkar to provide his perspective on the performance of the first quarter financial. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ravi. And thank you to all of you who've joined us in this call taking time to join us in this call to hear about our performance for the first quarter. From the results that you would have seen, this has been a very strong quarter for us. We've had great traction in client wins. The volumes continue to be very strong across the healthcare business and the UK public sector business. I want to make special reference to the UK public sector business. That is something new for us. Many of you who've been following us for a long time know that the UK business has been struggling in the past, but has really picked up tailwinds since April of 2020. And that momentum continues into April of 2021 as well. It's one of the fastest growing businesses and geographies for us, and a large part of our clients come from the UK public sector. We continue to work from home, even though the pandemic is now kind of better from the levels that we saw in April and May. We have not really opened up our offices, considering the fact that that can at any point of time. To from home, and the advantage that we see out of working from home is the fact that it helps us in managing many of our operating costs. So travel costs, transportation costs, utility and maintenance costs, all of these costs are reduced because people are working from home. And unless there is a big change in the safety coming from COVID, we expect to continue to work that way. The next slide, which is slide 7, talks about the growth in both rupee terms and in dollar terms. You would see that in rupee terms, our revenues have grown from 12,359 million to 15,505 million. That represents a 25.5% growth. The EBITDA has grown from 1,458 million to 2,321 million, which is almost a 60% growth. Profit before tax has a handsome growth as well. It's almost double of what it was last quarter. 755 million compared with 1,642 million, which is about 110.5% growth. And the profit after tax, 492 million compared with 1,170 million, 137.7% growth. So in rupee terms, obviously these numbers are pretty spectacular, and I just wanted to give you some context of that. Those of you who remember our quarter one performance of last year would remember that quarter one was the first quarter in which COVID had actually hit. We had a lot of troubles in April. It started to getting sorted out by May, and by end June, we had recovered almost complete productivity. As a result of that, our revenues, profitability in quarter one was much lower than our normative profitability. That is why when you compare quarter one of last year with quarter one of this year, even though COVID continues to be an issue, our numbers are looking so much better because of the fact that operating in a work from home environment, trying to manage safety of our employees while COVID still rages unmitigated, we therefore have now made it the new normal, and we have figured out how to do this thing well. And that is the impact that you see in our revenue growth and our profitability numbers. The table below gives you the similar growth in US dollar terms. Revenue growth of 28%, EBITDA growth of 63%, PBT growth of 122%, and PAT growth of 143%. So these are high-level numbers for the quarter when you compare that with the previous year's similar quarter. On slide 9, I want to take you through the key takeaways, which has really been a great quarter. Growth has been fantastic, driven, again, as I would like to mention, by the UK public sector, which has been putting up a stellar performance. A lot of the work that we do for the UK public sector are around the vaccination support that we provide for the National Health Service, NHS. And that is something, as you know, UK has rolled out a very ambitious vaccination program, and we do provide support for the UK government for that particular program. We also had a employee satisfaction survey done in quarter 4, and we were very heartened to see the employee satisfaction score actually was the highest in many, many years. And our employee attrition was also last year at a very low number. As you know, this is a people business, and therefore having high employee satisfaction, good employee tenure, and low level of attrition are crucial for these businesses. Thankfully, last year, in the midst of such a global pandemic, we managed to hit a high even in employee satisfaction. For the rest of the year, open enrollment is on course. We are setting up 2 new centers, one in Jamaica and the other one in Northern Ireland. And we have a pretty significant hiring plan for the coming quarters as well. We are actually trying to see if we can replicate the success of healthcare into some other verticals. So we're looking at financial services, technology, media, telecom also is a fairly strong vertical for us. So we are exploring options for that. Everybody's talking digital. Let me tell you a little bit more about what digital means for us so that it doesn't sound like the digital cliche and the digital drum that everybody is banging now. We do believe that our growth in the coming year and our business in the coming decade will be driven by AAA. And what I mean by AAA is analytics, artificial intelligence, and automation being the 3 pillars of success. And on top of that, you add cloud to it. We are talking about a new kind of firm, a new kind of AGS post this divestiture. I would call it AGS 2.0. That essentially is a technology-led company into the customer experience transformation space. For the first 2 decades of our existence, we've been in the customer experience field for a very long time, for the first 2 decades. In the 3rd decade, you will see us leading with transformative customer experience management through technology. And that is where the triple play that I talked about will come in. We're also going to invest in building our capability in cloud. As I talk about technology-led services company, clearly we would also have to bolster our presence in technology capabilities. And that's why we are also looking out for a string of pearls acquisition strategy to fill up whatever capability gaps that we have out there. Work at home will continue to remain the future of our work. We will probably end up adopting a hybrid model as and when the COVID situation improves worldwide. As of now, we don't really have visibility as to whether the COVID situation is on the way to improvement or not, whether the 3rd wave is going to be real or not. So we continue to take a very risk-averse safe strategy. As I told you, this is a very efficient model of working because it helps us manage our costs better. Now I want to talk a little bit about the divestiture that all of you have heard about. We have divested our healthcare business to Barings Private Equity Asia. We signed definitive agreements to sell our healthcare services to the funds affiliated with BPEA, one of the largest private alternative investment firm in Asia. You would have seen the value that it has unlocked to all AGS shareholders because we've been able to close that transaction at 1.2 billion, subject to working capital closing adjustments. We expected to complete this between 90 to 120 days, subject to shareholder and other regulatory approval. We will transfer all our client contracts, about 20,000 employees, assets related to healthcare services business. We do have some healthcare clients in a digital and HRO payroll processing business. Those will continue to remain with us as a part of the AGS portfolio. Once it closes, this will bring in a fair amount of cash into the system. Our plan to utilize the cash are the following: invest in the organic growth of the business, invest in larger sales engine, look at acquisitions to fill up capability gaps in the string of pearls strategy that I talked about. We will of course be very careful of the fact that there is quite a few. Our shareholders have been very, very loyal to us, and we would look at opportunities to unlock value for them as well. What shape and form that is going to take It's not something that we will be able to discuss in detail in today's call. Also, please remember, this is only a definitive agreement that has been signed yesterday. The closing of the transaction is about 90 to 120 days out, and the cash will come only post-closing, subject to working capital changes and taxes. Coming back to business as usual, FY22 has opened pretty strong. You've seen our numbers, and we do believe that the momentum will continue for the rest of the year. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Pala to give you a financial update of how we are doing. With that, over to you, Pala.
Thank you, Partha. I just want to check, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, Pala.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our Q1 FY22 earnings call. I will briefly touch on the financials of the company. We have seen strong revenue growth. As Partha mentioned, it's about 28.5% in dollar terms over the same period last year. So that's a very high growth level. In rupee terms, it's slightly muted at 25.5%. That's because for the USD INR was about 75.42 for the quarter ended June 20, and it was at 73.62 for the quarter ending June 21. So clearly the rupee has appreciated during these periods under comparison, and as a result, some of the growth has got shaved off, leading to 25.5% growth in rupee terms. On top of this, we have seen a very strong EBITDA growth, 59.2% over the same period last year, and margins have also expanded from 11.8% to 15%. So a strong revenue growth and a margin expansion has resulted in PBT being higher by about 117% and PAT being higher by about 138% on a year-on-year basis. On a sequential basis, there is a small drop in revenue, about 0.8% in rupee terms. Bear in mind that Q4 is typically a very strong quarter because of the impact of open enrollment. This year, with the strong performance of the business, especially in the UK, the revenue dropped between Q4 of FY21 and Q1 of FY22 is muted. At a PBT level, again, it's at the same level, slightly lower by about 2%. So overall, a very strong performance both on the revenue side and even stronger performance on the PAT side compared to the quarter ended June 20. From a delivery perspective, India accounts for about 24%, 16% for Philippines, US, UK, Canada account for the rest, with Jamaica coming in at about 6.5%. From origination perspective, USA accounts for about 68%, Canada accounts for about 10%. UK, as we mentioned earlier, has shown very strong growth. So from a single digit sub 10% of total revenues, it now accounts for 16% of the total revenues. From a vertical perspective, healthcare continues to be the biggest vertical. This includes health insurance, pharmaceutical, healthcare, that has come in at about 55.5%. In coming to our balance sheet in terms of debt, the total debt we have as of 30th June is 3,719 million, out of which about 52% are in the form of term loans. Rest is in the form of working capital. 60% of our debt, which is linked to LIBOR. Rest are all fixed, typically fixed interest loans, either in India or overseas. Our balance sheet continues to be strong. During this quarter ending June 21, we reduced 145 million rupees of debt between March 21 and June 21. And at the overall level, we are a net cash company with about 4,200 billion of cash in excess of debt. And this has increased by roughly about 230 million between June and March. Our capex for the quarter was 448 million. We have seen a significant reduction in DSO days. The DSO days, which stood at 72 days of revenue, has come down to 68 days as of June 21. So a strong growth in EBITDA, reduction in DSO days, and capex in line with what we had in the previous year has led to significant cash generation, with EBITDA to free cash flow conversion at about 137%. Clearly, this is an outlier. As we go through the rest of the year, we would see some drop in the conversion between EBITDA to free cash flow. But at an overall level, we expect it to be strong, looking at the performance of the company. Our ROCE also continues to be strong, and for the quarter, on an annualized basis, comes to about 25%. Coming to forward covers, we do continue to take covers in buckets of rolling 12 months, 24 and 36 months. So as for FY22, we have a forward cover rate of about 77, which is significantly higher than the current spot rates. For FY23, we have hedges of about 64.5 million at 80.5. And as we go into the next bucket for FY24, the volumes have come down to about 28, but the rate is very attractive at 83.9 rupees for the dollar. In Philippines, we have covers for FY22 on 104 million at 48.6 pesos to the dollar. And we have some forward covers in FY23 at a rate of 49. Coming to our overall financial profile, as of 30th June 2021, we have net worth of 22,000 million rupees, or about $296 million. Our book value per share is about 1,054. Based on yesterday's market price of 3,082, was 3,082, and based on our trailing 12 months, our EPS is 193.4 rupees, and it is trading at a P by E ratio of 16 on a trailing 12-month basis. As we said earlier, we have gross debt of 379 million, cash of about 3790 million, total cash of 7,990 million, resulting in net cash of 4,200 billion. Our gross debt to equity is very comfortable at 0.17 to net worth. Our performance has been recognized by the stock markets. Over the last 12 months, over a 1-year period, HGS share price has gone up by about 52%, higher than Nifty 50 or PNX IT, which have gone up in the range of 26% to 47%. As of yesterday, the market cap is somewhere in the range, little over 6,000 crores. That's all for the financial section of the presentation. Now I open the floor, give it back to the moderator and request him to open the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone phone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Participants, to ask a question, please press star and one. The first question is from the line of Siddharth Oberoi from Prudent Equity. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Congratulations, and thanks a lot for this fantastic deal. So my question was that what is the rationale for selling? I just saw the interview on CNBC where you said that the prime objective was to create shareholder value. So exactly how this value got created? Would you like to pay back the amount to the shareholders, or that somebody is assigned this value to this business? You could just clarify this.
Well, if you've seen the CNBC interview, I did clearly mention that our struggle and a failure for past 2 decades has been to be able to make the market understand what this business is all about. This is a very specialized, domain-intensive healthcare business. And even in investor meetings that we've had, we've struggled to be able to explain what this is. And therefore, the value unlocking was just not happening. So we had a couple of choices. One was to make it private and then list abroad, which is a very complex process, as all of you know. And therefore, we looked at another option of being in a private equity player to see whether a minority investment would unlock value for us. While negotiating with various private equity players, we found that there is a lot of interest in buying of the business completely at very attractive valuations. And once we saw the attractive valuations, we realized that it is best for us to be able to completely divest this business. So you do realize that it is accretive for the shareholders. In what shape and form the shareholders are going to be rewarded, it is a little premature. As I told you, we've just signed the transaction yesterday. We haven't really closed the transaction yet. That is about 90 to 120 days away. So in what shape or form, I'm not in a position to discuss that right now on this call. As and when the cash comes in, and as and when we have further deliberations on the board, we will be able to come up with a concrete plan.
All right. And now, also, what's left in the business remaining? It's like about 2,600 crores of revenue with 10% EBIT margins around. Is that correct? 47% of the FY21 business.
Para, you want to take that question?
Yeah. So Siddharth, you're right. So the business which is proposed to be divested is about 53%. And the 47% is a business which is, it has digital, it has payroll processing, it has what we call CS business, customer engagement services, what we deliver out of US, UK, and originating from US, UK, and Canada, being delivered both from India, Philippines, US, Canada, Jamaica, and UK. So it's still a fairly large business and with a diversified portfolio. As Partha mentioned earlier, the UK business continues to perform very well, and a significant portion of the growth which you are seeing in Q1 of FY22 over Q1 of FY21 has come in from the UK business.
Okay. So right. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So right now, like you have spoken about this pole of acquisition, have you identified anything right now?
Well, by looking at acquisitions is a part of our ongoing story. We look at ongoing acquisitions is something that we have done many in the past and will continue to be our path to growth and capability building in the future. So is there something definitive right now? I won't be able to talk about that, but yes, we look at multiple deals at any point of time. So there is a deal pipeline for acquisitions that we have at any point of time. And nothing to the stage that I can say that I can discuss and definitely confirm today.
All right. Okay. All right. So, well, once again, excellent deal. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth.
A reminder to the participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may please press star and 1 at this time. Participants, to ask a question, please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Manvardhan Bed from Laurel Investment Advisors. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Congratulations on a good set of numbers. Just wanted to understand that post this deal, who will be the key management personnel who will continue? So from a leadership perspective, what can one expect going forward?
So I will continue to be the CEO of this company. Pala, who's on this call with me, will continue as the CFO. The head of the healthcare business is going to transfer over. His name is Ramesh Gopalan. Along with, there are 2 other members of my leadership team who will be transferring over to the new entity. One is my CTO, Mr. C. Subramania, and another is the head of strategic initiatives from an HR perspective, Mr. Anthony Joseph. So of my team, a total of 3 of my direct reports will transfer into the new healthcare business.
Fair enough. And wanted to understand that now of what, with what is sort of the business that we continue to operate post this deal, how would our focus change in these businesses? Is there scope of us venturing into healthcare in some other way, or is there a no compete agreement with regards to healthcare, etc.?
Yeah, there is a limited period non-compete into healthcare, so we won't be able to operate in the healthcare space while that non-compete remains.
Okay. And so till that time, where would our focus be, and what is the duration of this non-compete?
Our focus will continue to be in the customer experience space. But in the last 2 decades, we've really been focusing on the labor-intensive part of the customer experience space. What we are going to focus on in our 3rd decade of existence will be how do we drive transformation in customer experience space by bringing in technology. So therefore, it's going to be a lot more technology-led going forward.
And sort of the remaining piece, where do our EBITDA margins stand in the remaining piece?
We don't give guidance by line of business, so I won't be able to give you specific numbers. But Pala, you want to discuss you want to give some kind of qualitative answer?
Yeah, so let me take that. Thanks, Partha. So as you said, we don't give EBITDA by individual vertical or that kind of analysis. All I can say is that this is a business what is going to be left after the healthcare business is divested is the UK business, which continues to perform very well. We have a strong onshore presence in North America, and which has a good mix of onshore and offshore business. Plus, we have the HRO business and what we are calling as our digital services. So we have a business with reasonably good margins. And as Partha said, we now become a technology-led BPO. And clearly, that's where our focus and investments will be.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dipesh Mehta from Emkay Global. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. I think continuing on the previous question, can you share for FY21 what was the margin for the remaining business versus healthcare, which is historical? I am not asking for forward-looking statement. Second thing is on the balance sheet related thing. Can you help us understand what cash and debt will be transferred to the residual business and what would move to the carved out kind of thing, which is likely to be sold to the private equity? And third question is, after the consideration which we receive, if you can provide how much we would like to retain for future growth and how much we would like to return back to shareholders. Thanks.
Okay. So let me take the questions. This is Bala here. So as far as the transaction with the PE fund is concerned, the value of 1,200 million is on a debt-free, cash-free basis. And of course, that will be subject to customary adjustments such as working capital. So from a conceptually, the buyer will get a business which is completely debt-free and cash-free and with adequate working capital. So if you look at the debt position as of 30th of June, which stands at 379 crores, that will remain with HGS and will not be transferred. As I said, we have about 420 crores of cash. That would also remain with HGS and will not be transferred. In terms of FY21, as I said earlier, we don't give revenue margin, the margin splits or EBITDA splits by vertical. So I'm sorry, I will not be able to share that right now.
And the third question about use of the case proceeding?
So Partha touched on that, right? So we will use, we are still, I said, some time away from closing. The board is deliberating on it. As I said, the end use could be, reduction of debt, investments in the business, acquisitions, and, some form of reward to the shareholders. The specifics are being worked out. So right at this stage, it would not be right for me to say anything beyond this.
And on the first question about now, because we have already decided to and we enter into agreement to sell that business, then I think at least from investor perspective, it makes sense you to share some data about that business, right? What is going out of the company and what will remain and what profitability it operates. When it used to be part of console entity, if you don't want to share, it's fine. But when you are planning to carve it out and exiting that business, it is, I think, advisable at least if you share some statistics, how the new entity will look like, what margin profile that entity will have.
Sure, we will share that separately.
Bala, just to interrupt you, Dipeshji, till now we have not given the breakup of EBITDA between healthcare and non-healthcare. Since it is unpublished and price sensitive at this point of time, we won't be able to comment on that. But definitely I will tell Bala to give that breakup in subsequent announcement so that you will have the details. Thank you. Once we release it to everybody in public, then we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we would like to remind participants that you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Akash Chaturvedi from Alpha Alternative. Please go ahead.
Hi. Can you give us an idea about the tax impact for the deal?
Yeah. So, this business, while we are selling it off, it is effectively being businesses sold in India, Philippines, Jamaica, and US. So it would be the tax rates applicable in each of the geographies, the form of the way the transaction is happening. So our estimate is the tax rates would be in the range of 22 to 23%, given it's being done as a slump sale in India and Philippines.
Does that answer your question, Akash?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. A reminder to participants, anyone who wishes to ask a question may please press star and one at this time. Next question is from the line of Apurva Prasad from HDFC Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I had a couple of quick ones. So, wanted to get this correct. The residual business margin, is that double digit and a 500 basis points differential? I'm referring to, I think, the media commentary by Partha. Would that be a correct assessment?
Sorry, but what was the question once again?
Yeah, so the margin profile of the residual business, would that be double digit with a 500 basis points differential, the business that is sold?
Approximately, yes. But as I said, as we look into the pro forma of the business that is left forward, we will be able to give you better information and more qualified information in the next couple of months.
Got it. And Partha, anything if you can talk about in terms of inorganic plan for the residual business?
I told you that we are looking at three vectors being drivers for growth around the technology space: analytics, AI, and artificial and automation. So those are the areas that we are focusing on, and those are capability areas that we already have inside our shop today. These are subscale today, and we want to scale those up. And that's where we may look at acquiring some of those capabilities so that it can quickly come up to scale and we can add value in our client businesses. Cloud is another area that we're looking at, where we can deploy telephony on the cloud, which is the big technology that is coming in. We are also looking at platform service providers, because the big theme about BPO for the future is BPaaS, which is business process as a solution, right? And that's where we're trying to see whether we can develop platform or acquire platform on which the business process services can be delivered. So these are 4-5 areas. I know it's a fairly generic answer. All possibilities are available right now in front of us. We are exploring that in fair amount of detail to see which are the bets that we want to take. We don't want to defocus and try to do too many things at the same time. That is a surefire way of failure. We want to pick up a few things and do that really, really well.
Thanks for the color on that, Partha. But just to clarify, would the nature of these still be bolt-on acquisitions, or would you look at more strategic acquisitions in some of these areas?
I don't know what you see. Bolt-on means more of the same. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, tuck-in acquisitions, smaller, say sub 10%.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, I don't think. I don't have a specific number, but if you do a string of pearls, there would be smaller acquisition, which is in the capability building area, right? But that doesn't preclude something that comes along which already has scale, and therefore we would look at it differently. So all options are available on the table. We won't do something very small because that clearly is a lot of work. But some of the capability areas that we look for, you don't really have large firms in that space. And even if you have those firms are very, very astronomically valued. It doesn't make sense.
Got it. Thanks and all the best. Yeah.
Thanks, Apurva. Just to clarify, just to go back to your first question. See, if this is a carve-out deal where, the facilities, people, there is separation which would need to happen on closing of the deal across multiple geographies. There are some parts which are open in terms of what stays behind, especially on shared services, facilities, etc., and what goes. So that's why we'll work this out and share the margin profile rather than give something which may be incorrect. So please bear with us.
Got it. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Manish Parekh, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. A very good evening, and congratulations for great set of numbers and for the deal with Baring as well. So my simple question is that the amount of 1.2 billion adjusted for various adjustments of working capital, will it come in a single tranche, or is there any kind of performance aspect which will be paid in different tranches to us?
It's the final deal. There is no the deal is finalized. It's only subject to adjustments like working capital or items like that. But there's nothing linked to future performance. So the consideration is frozen.
Okay, sir. Thank you. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Abhay, private investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I just had a question regarding that. So the money that is coming in, and as you're coming out of this healthcare business, just wanted to know that if are you going to use the same money and re-enter a healthcare business in some other part of the world? And the second was like the IPs and all the automations that you were talking about. So can you give us like a bit of brief on what type of automation technology that you are looking at? So that will help. Thank you.
So we talked about non-compete. So there is a non-compete. We won't be able to do healthcare business anywhere. So that is the answer.
But is it for a locking? So is it for like 5 years, 10 years down the line that maybe later you come up? Or is it?
Yeah, see, there are some caveats that are available. For example, if you were to acquire a business today, which today has some amount of healthcare, so long as it is not above a certain small value, we can acquire such a business, right? So there are some fine print available in the non-compete. So it's not by and large, we can't do healthcare at scale is probably the right way to answer this question.
Okay. And the automations that you're looking at, so
you have tools. We have the tools. The ones that we work on are Automation Anywhere and UiPath. Those are standard tools that are available in the market. Most of our automation development, we do have a joint go-to-market with some of these licensed players. We do have some work that we do on Blue Prism. These are the top three technologies. We have our own developments as well. We've developed our own platforms as well in the automation space.
So the acquisition could come on those new platforms developers, like new companies that come up with developing platforms. So would we think that you could be thinking of acquiring some new companies which would be like the startups which works on those platforms and all? So will your acquisition part consider that as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, we would like to remind participants that you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Shanti Patel from Shanti Patel Investments. Please go ahead.
So this non-compete agreement that you have entered into, it is in force for how many years? Hello?
Yeah, Pala, you want to take that?
Yeah. We have certain confidentiality clauses, but all I can say that it's not a very long period.
No, but that means, the moment the period is over, we are free to enter into that area. Is it correct?
Yes.
So approximately it is a short-term, long-term. So I mean, can you give little idea about the period?
Yeah, it is. It's not a very long term.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Raghav Agarwal from Star Securities Limited. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. So, in terms of, you keep talking about future acquisition. So, my question was pertaining to that. could you give us an idea, I mean, like what sort of ticket size are you looking at in terms of your acquisition in the future for each, maybe, if there are multiple, I mean, so do you have any idea or estimate about what size of acquisitions you're going to do?
The tuck-ins could be smaller in size, let's say $10 to $25 million, but it's not the only kind of thing that we do. If you find something bigger and which actually strategy, bigger ticket as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Prafulla, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I just wanted to ask a question regarding, did you evaluate selling non-healthcare business and retaining healthcare?
I'm sorry. No, we did not evaluate that because we found that the value unlocking was maximum in the healthcare business.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Navish Jain, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question relates to what you had just conveyed earlier, that part of the money will be used for maybe some exhibitions, some small exhibitions, some operations, and part will be given to investors. What I wanted to know, you would mind that how you will give it to investors in view of the fact that taxes on dividends are very high. Whatever money has come, you pay capital gain tax, which company will be paying, and then it comes to individuals, and then, it is full taxable, 30% or whatever your bracket is. So you have in mind that how individual investors can be given this money so that it's tax friendly?
Yeah, so all options are available. We are aware of the pros and cons of the different ways of returning money to the shareholders. We will evaluate all of them, and we want to make sure that our shareholders are appropriately rewarded. But I won't be able to discuss specifics right now. I think it's a little ahead of time till we have a concrete time.
Okay, right. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. As there are no further questions, I now hand the conference over to Mr. Ravi Ramalingam for closing comments.
Thanks, Monitor. This is Ravi here again. Thank you to all the participants for joining us in the post-results conference call. If there are any further questions or clarifications about the Q1 FY22 financials, please email me or to Pala, the CFO. We'll be more than happy to get back to you. This is Ravi signing off on behalf of SGS Management. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Hinduja Global Solutions Limited, that concludes this conference call for today. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.